Hey everyone, I'm Liz Fairy, and today I'm going to show you how I made these cute crochet unicorn dolls. I made two different styles, one that's just a regular unicorn, and one with wings. You can find a link to my feather doll wings tutorial in the description below. Some things you'll need for this project are a crochet hook, I'm going to use a size E, a pair of scissors, some stitch markers, a yarn needle, a sewing needle and regular thread, some fiber fill, and a couple of different yarns. I'm using white yarn for the main body color, and gold crochet thread for the horn and hooves. I'm actually going to use several threads of this at once to make it a similar weight as the yarn. And to make the hair and tail, I'm using a gradient of colors. I have a black yarn, a dark violet yarn, a charcoal gray yarn, a lavender gray yarn, a grapey purple yarn, a magenta yarn, a watermelon pink yarn, and a bubblegum pink yarn. All of these are worsted weight yarns from Red Heart or Loops and Threads brand, except for the crochet thread, which is Aunt Lydia brand. Feel free to switch up the colors in any way you choose. You can also find the written pattern for this doll in my Ravelry store. I'm going to begin by making the head. I'm starting with my white yarn. First, I'm going to create a double magic circle, then single crochet 6 into my magic circle. So I'm going to pull up a loop and chain 1, and that will count as the first stitch. Then I'll single crochet 5 more into my circle. And now I'm going to close my magic circle by pulling on the tail a little bit until I have one bigger loop and one smaller loop. Then I'll pull on the smaller loop from the side closest to the tail until the bigger loop gets smaller and disappears. Then I'm going to pull on the tail until the remaining loop closes. If you'd like to see more on how to make a magic circle or a double magic circle, you can check out my magic circles tutorials. I'm going to orient the face of the doll as though the magic circle is the front of the doll's nose, with the beginning of the row counting as the bottom of the doll's head, the middle of the row counting as the top of the doll's head, the first 3 stitches of the row count as the right side of the doll's head, and the last 3 stitches of the row count as the left side of the doll's head. Now I'm going to single crochet for 2 rows to elongate the nose. Next, I'll increase at the top of the head 3 times for 3 rows. In row 1 of increase, I'm going to single crochet into the first 2 stitches of the row before I start to increase. Now I'll increase 3 times by single crocheting 2 times into the same stitch. And I'll repeat that 2 more times. Then I'll single crochet in the last stitch of the row. In the second row of increase, I'm going to single crochet 3 before I create my 3 increases. Next, I'll increase the next 3 stitches, then I'll single crochet in the last 3 stitches of the row. In the third row of increase, I'm going to single crochet 5 before my increases. Now I'll increase the next 3 stitches, and then single crochet in the last 4, In the next row, I'm going to create the cheek by increasing 3 times per side of the head. So I'll single crochet 2 before I begin to increase. And then I'll increase into the next 3 stitches, and then single crochet 5 times in between until I get to the other side, where I'm going to increase 3 more times. Now I'll increase the next 3 stitches, and single crochet into the last 2 stitches of the row. Next, to shape the brow, I'm going to decrease 3 times at the top of the head for 1 row. So I'll single crochet 8 times before starting my decrease. Then I'll decrease 3 times. To decrease, I'm just going to insert my hook through the front loops of the next 2 stitches, pull up a loop through both of those stitches, and single crochet to decrease. Then I'll repeat that 2 more times. Next, I'll single crochet into the last 7 stitches of the row. Now I'm going to single crochet for 3 rows. In the next row, I'm going to make the ears. First, I'll single crochet into the first 7 stitches, then into the front loop of the next stitch, I'm going to chain 1, single crochet 3, make a picot, then single crochet 3 more in the same loop, and then chain 1 more to make the ear. So first I'll chain 1. At the top of the stitch, there are 2 loops. Here's the back loop, and here's the front loop. I'm going to make all the stitches of the ear into the front loop only, and I'll leave the back loop open, because when I come back to do the next row, I'm going to skip all the stitches of the ear, and I'll work into this back loop instead. So first, I'm going to use one of my stitch markers to mark this first stitch of the ear as the first stitch of my group of stitches that I'm going to skip in the next row. Then I'll single crochet 3 times into the front loop of the next stitch. And I'll use another stitch marker to mark that back loop so that I know where to work my stitch when I make the next row. Next, I'll make the picot. I'll chain 4, then slip stitch into the 3rd chain from the hook, and then I'll single crochet in the next chain. And then I'll single crochet 3 more times into the same front loop as before, then chain 1 again, and I'm going to use another stitch marker to mark this chain as the last stitch of my group of stitches that I'm going to skip in the next row. Now I'll just continue working single crochets into the stitches in between the ears until I get to where the other ear should go. I'm going to single crochet just 2 times in between the ears. Then I'll repeat the same thing to make the next ear. Chain 1. I'll use a stitch marker to mark the chain as the first stitch of my group of skipped stitches in the next row. Then single crochet 3 times into the front loop of the next stitch. And use another stitch marker to mark the back loop. And make a picot. Chain 4, then slip stitch to the 3rd chain from the hook, and then single crochet in the next chain. Then I'll single crochet 3 more times into the same front loop as before, and chain 1 to end the ear, and mark the chain as the last stitch of my group of skipped stitches. Then I'll finish up the row by single crocheting in the last 7 stitches of the row. Next, I'm going to single crochet in each stitch for 1 row, and I'm going to skip each stitch of the ear and work instead into the back loops behind each ear. So I'll single crochet 7 until I get to the first ear. Now I'm going to skip all the stitches of the first ear. Next, I'll single crochet in that back loop behind the ear. And single crochet into the 2 stitches in between the ears until I get to the next one. Then I'll skip all the stitches of the next ear. Then once again I'll single crochet into the back loop behind the next ear, and I'll single crochet into the last 7 stitches of the row. Now I'll create 2 rows of decrease to finish up the head. In the first row of decrease, I'm going to decrease every 2nd stitch of the row. So I'll single crochet in the next stitch, then insert the hook through the front loops of the next 2 stitches, pull up a loop through both, and single crochet to decrease. And I'll repeat that across the whole row. Single crochet in the next stitch, then decrease the next 2 stitches together. Before I create my last row of decrease, I'm going to stuff the head with some fiber fill. Now in the second row of decrease, I'll decrease every single stitch. So I'll pull up a loop through the front loops of the first 2 stitches, pull up a loop through both, and single crochet to decrease, and continue doing that for every stitch of the row. At the end of the row, I'll slip stitch to the first stitch to fasten off the yarn, and I'll cut off a long tail to sew the hole at the back of the head closed, tack down the ears, and attach the head to the body. Next, I'll make the doll's body. I'll start with a slip knot and chain 12. Then I'll join the chain into a ring with a slip stitch. Now into the ring, I'm going to single crochet 12. Next, I'll single crochet for 2 more rows to elongate the neck. Now in the next row, I'm going to increase at the front to make the body get bigger. I'm going to increase 6 times into the first 6 stitches of the row. And then single crochet into the last 6 stitches of the row. And now I'll just single crochet for 2 more rows to elongate the body a bit more. So I've finished with 2 rows of single crochet. In the next row, I'm going to increase 6 times at the front again to widen the body a bit more. First, I'll single crochet 1, then increase the next stitch. Now I'll do that 5 more times so that I have a total of 6 increases. That way my increases are more spaced out along the front. Then I'll single crochet in the last 6 stitches of the row. Now I'm going to single crochet for 6 more rows to lengthen the body the rest of the way. To end the work, I'll decrease 6 times per row for 3 rows. In the first row of decrease, I'll decrease every 3rd stitch of the row. So single crochet into the first 2 stitches, then insert the hook into the front loops of the next 2 stitches, pull up a loop through both, and single crochet to decrease. And continue that pattern until the end of the row. single crochet in the next 2 stitches, then crochet the next 2 stitches together to decrease. In the second row of decrease, I'm going to decrease every second stitch. So single crochet into the first stitch, then decrease the next 2 stitches together, and continue to decrease every second stitch until the end of the row. In the last row of decrease, I'll decrease every single stitch. Then at the end of the row, I'll slip stitch to the first stitch of the row to fasten off the yarn. And I'll cut off a long tail to sew the hole at the bottom closed. Then I'll add some fiber fill to the body. This seems like a good spot to take a break so that the video doesn't get too long. In part 2, I'll make the legs, the mane and the tail, and I'll sew on the eyes. See you there!